Welcome to Paradigm Shift TV 314. This is your brother, Piankhi Nobody, Ra. And we got another co-production with our brother Nobody from Trust and Believe the Gospel. He and I are going to be going over a video with Shakka, Ahmose, and Pastor Damon Richardson. Before we get into our brother introduction, let me do my usual rundown. I want to say hotep to my fellow Kemetic brothers and sisters. I want to say God bless to my fellow Christian brothers and sisters. I want to say Islam to my Moorish brothers and sisters. I want to say Assalamu alaikum to my brothers and sisters in the NOI. And I want to say Jumbo to the rest of my brothers and sisters throughout the African diaspora, be it here in the wilderness of the United States of America or beyond. Y'all know why I say that greeting is because if you are Black, I'm with you and I hope you are with me. Our different ideologies shouldn't keep us from uniting. We can disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable. And with that, I'm gonna have my brother Nobody introduce himself.
Y'all already know me. I'm Nobody. I always trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save everybody. That is Jesus the Christ. I am the host of Trust and Believe the Gospel YouTube channel, where my co-host is Jerome, the Conscious Christian Green. That's Mr. Co-host to you. And as everybody know, we want to smoke. What's good, bro? You doing all right tonight?
With you, bro?
Man, you know, ready to watch this video and see what type of theologies and ideologies me and you disagree about.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's get into it. So this came about because Shakka almost returned to the House of Consciousness, Sinetta Studios. He was doing an interview, and apparently Pastor Damon Richardson tried to call in. Right. It appeared to me that Shakka wanted to let him in, but because of what happened with Brother Polite, Sinetta was like, forget that, you know, was kind of going off. And so the next day on Garfield channel, Pastor Richardson called in. Now, Pastor Richardson, it seemed to me, had the impression that Shakka didn't want him on Sinetta. But again, to me, it looked like Shakka was like, yeah, let him in. Come on, get him in here. But Sinetta didn't want to do it. And so I think it was a little bit of confusion there where it was implied that Shakka was running, but I didn't get that impression.
Yeah, no, I didn't get that impression as well. I watched the Sinetta joint live as well, and yeah, Shakka was trying to let him in, and Sinetta was being Sinetta, like you said, based off of the interactions that they had with the phone call with Brother Polite. So he was acting like he didn't want to let him in. He was also acting like he didn't even know who Damon Richardson was, in which we know that that's a lie because they had the phone call or whatever, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I'm with you so far.
Exactly. And so once he was on Garfield, if I'm not mistaken, he had a big blow up with Rob Bourne, who I respect, about Elijah Muhammad. Had some engagements with some of the other brothers who are vehemently against Christianity for one reason or another. And of course, when you're against a doctrine, you lash out at the people who follow the doctrine, which, you know, it kind of remind me of why I try not to do that. I ain't saying I'm always successful, but I try to focus on the doctrine instead of focusing on the people, if that makes sense, because it seemed like they was attacking the brother about what he believed in versus just attacking the doctrine. You know what I mean? And that kind of, you know, I didn't feel a way, but I just didn't feel like that was the right approach, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, you know, it just depends on, in my opinion, it just depends on which situation it comes, because you can have people who sticking up for a certain doctrine but don't follow the doctrine. Therefore, you would have to go off the person. But then in most cases, when it comes to that case, then yeah, you should just attack the doctrine, saying that that's what the person was presenting. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And so from there, Shakka called in. It started out kind of heated, kind of messed up. Wasn't looking good.
Right.
And I credit Garfield for moderating and mediating between the brothers, and it ended up being a pretty good discourse. Sarnetta got a hold of it, chopped it up, and edited it to just the part between Shakka and Pastor Richardson, and that's what we're about to get into now. Any comments before we press play?
If you know, the day after this, they did a recap on the Dagger Squad, and you know, I was a part of the panel when that went down, and I defended like a position or two of Damon Richardson against the other 2 or 3 brothers that was on there, who was, of course, you know, just hating on the person rather than the doctrine. But I'm gonna have to post that for the audience as well on my channel. I just wanted to put that out there too.
No doubt. Throw that over to me too. I'll throw it up on here as well.
Cool.
And with that, family, before we press play, what we'll be doing is we're gonna let it rock. At certain points, I'll stop it. At certain points, Trust will stop it. We'll kind of discuss what we agree with, what we disagree with, what points we think was made, what points we disagree with, etc. And you know, it'll be that type of thing. But I just want to say, as you can see with me and my brother Nobody, or who I call Trust, sometimes it just depends. You can disagree ideologically and still be brothers, still be good, still have love, etc., still be able to work together. And I just want to point that out, that my man is a Christian. I'm a Kemetic Seba, but we get it in whenever we can. And then we also have our debates and our dialogues where we discuss our disagreements, but it's never not brotherhood. And so I think this is our camaraderie is an example of how it could be done versus how it seems to be done.
But it's never about hate, man. It's never about hate. It's always about love. And when it comes to us, even outside of love, it's about truth of information. A lot of people like to say it's about information. Well, some information is unneeded. And since it's so much information, it needs to be filtered through. And you don't have to hate on another person's belief in order to get the truth out of information. And since this community is growing in the way that it's growing, it needs people from either side of the spectrum to point out what's true and what's false, despite of the hate that other individuals may have for another person's belief. Because I don't hate another person in no way, shape, or form, despite if I agree with what they believe or not. And I think a lot of people need to acknowledge that over the hate they have for a particular belief system.
Absolutely. All right, with that, we're gonna get into the video.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Sarnetta Studios. Don't get no better than honest consciousness info. Sarnetta TV7. We keep it hot 24/7. That light will handle too. Sarnetta TV2. Yeah. You are now inside Sarnetta Studios, the House of Consciousness production. Black news presentation.
Florida International.
Let me ask.
Can I finish? You didn't want me to interrupt you. No, you didn't want me to interrupt you. You're not going to interrupt. You didn't want me to interrupt you. You didn't want me to interrupt you. You didn't want me to interrupt you. You're scared now. You're scared now. You're scared. David, now you're scared. Now you're scared, David. Now you're scared.
David, hold on.
David, you didn't want me to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Shakka. Shakka, go ahead. Let her talk. Go ahead, brother.
Thank you. My queen is a PhD candidate right now at FIU, and her degree is in biological chemistry. She got a master's. So she got a degree in psychology. She got a degree in chemistry, and now she's getting her PhD.
And after,
Excuse me, can I finish? Don't correct me. You don't have to agree with me.
No.
You have to agree with me. No, see? Hey, yo, hold on 1 second. Hey, yo, hey, Garfield, mute this motherfucker because he doesn't let people talk. He wants not to be interrupted, but he wants to other people. No,
you don't. People have to.
I didn't interrupt you.
No. If you're going to bring her in,
No, you're not going to control the conversation.
Listen, if you're going to bring her in and use her as a
bro, you don't make rules for this. This is not the church. You don't make rules for this. This is not the church.
I'll just leave the studio because
you can go ignorant right now. Yo, you can run like a little bitch. I don't care. You can run.
Ain't nobody running from you, dude. You don't even have a high school.
You can run.
Running from all of you. Running from all of
you. Talk. You don't.
Hold on a second. Shakka, stop. Damon, stop.
This point, every time I hear it, I laugh, right?
Me too, man.
Because they were so heated, particularly Shakka. And one thing I want to talk about is Pastor Richardson said something about Shakka's lack of education several times, and while Shakka is talking about his lack of a PhD, which I believe he pretty much finished, but I think he just had to do his dissertation, which if you know anything about that level of education, if that's all you have left, you pretty much have it.
No, yeah, you got it. Yeah, you get the title.
Dissertation is coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you get the title.
But I think that was a shot that Shakka wanted to throw, and he threw it. Pastor Richardson throwing his shots at Shakka's lack of education was funny as well. And so this is what I want to say about it. So for me, I think that education is obviously something that should be valued. I think that, it's something that people work hard at, they earn it, etc. My wife has 2 degrees. She had a bachelor's, a master's, and she's working on her PhD. So I definitely know what it takes to strive for something, to work hard at it, and to earn it. At the same time, I also know that when it comes to knowledge of a particular thing, you don't have to have education. And so I see both sides of the argument. I always tell people one of the most profound intellectual minds of our time, in my opinion, was Malcolm X. And he didn't have any formal education of any sort. But I think his intellect speaks for itself. Whether you believe he was misguided in what he believed religiously, or from a religious standpoint, that's fine. But his intellect, I don't think it could be questioned. And so another person who I think on a much lesser degree, but still profound in his own right, Tupac Shakur, when you listen to, outside of the music, when you listen to the young man speak, for somebody who died at 25, the intelligence that you heard when he talked about teen pregnancy, when he talked about poverty in the Black community, when he talked about the plight of Black people, the intelligence, you can hear it. And so while education has its place, I think we do have to understand and recognize that you don't have to have a formal education in order to be proficient at a particular subject matter or being able to attain knowledge of a particular thing. With respect to those who went out and got their education, because that should be respected, if you follow.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying totally, and I agree to a certain extent. Of course, I don't have anything beyond the high school education, so I believe of course, that a person can obtain knowledge and still be considered intellectual without having the papers from a accredited school in order to say so. But when it comes to people like, let's say, Malcolm X and Tupac Shakur, of course, they stayed in their lane of knowledge as well. You get what I'm saying? When it comes to Shakka, I feel like it's hypocritical to claim that where you get your knowledge from is scholarship, but then overlook a person who done the work that those same scholars had to do. But you see what I'm saying? To me, I feel like it's kind of hypocritical, because even if you are a person who study a particular area, if you're looking for the correct information, you're studying it under other scholars. You're not getting it from other people, let's say, such as yourself. You get what I'm saying? You would be getting the majority of it, or at least the correct form of it, from other scholars who have done their work and passed those tests and completed what they needed to complete. And that's where you will be getting your information from, if you get what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying?
I got you. And I'm not mad at that. Let's continue.
Shakka, I'm gonna bring you back.
Hold on.
What you gotta do, Shakka, listen.
Garfield, why did you let him interrupt me when I let him talk?
He's gone. He's not interrupting. Go ahead now. Say what you gotta say.
All right, I just proved to all of you in the audience that dude is an intellectual faggot, because when he was talking, I did not interrupt him. I let him talk and say what he had to say about his fake ass PhD all but dissertation. He does not have a PhD. For you to have a PhD, Queen, what do you have to have the PhD? Will you tell him, please? A real PhD.
Or the ones that they want to claim.
No, a real, no, let's tell him, yeah. He said he has an ABD, all but dissertation.
Not yet, he's not finished yet, he's still in progress.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, when you're in progress, you don't have one yet. You're still in progress, that's the whole point, all but dissertation.
No.
Everyone that does everything that they need to do, they do their classwork, they do their courses, they do their defense, their proposal, they do the qualifying exams. You can do all of that, but if you don't do your dissertation, you don't have a PhD, period.
Period. So stop running around and telling lies that you have a PhD. You intellectual faggot. How you gonna do that? I can't stand a dishonest man. That's why I don't fuck with Christians. That's why you take that phone call with polite. You are the perfect example of a Christian, and that's why I don't fuck with you hypocrites. Shut it down. All of you people are psychologically sick. You fucking, everything you do is contrary to what you claim. You motherfuckers are the children of Satan. Your own Bible said that shit. That's what the fuck you are. And Damon Richardson is the worst of all of them. And I can't wait to get it popping with this dude, because he's an intellectual faggot. He runs around telling lies. That's all he fucking does is lie. Straight
All right,
down.
let me respond. Give me a chance to let him respond. So
Hey,
fast
pause that real quick,
Yeah,
bro.
mute his mic. Mute his
All
mic.
right. I'm not going to
Pause that real quick.
Mute your mic, because you run your mouth.
Go ahead.
Piankhi, can you hear me?
Muted mine.
All right.
Number one, he brings his girl on who is not at the stage of the discussion of the PhD program that I'm at. So she can't.
Did you say something, bro?
Yeah. I was trying to see if you could pause it. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was trying to see if you could pause it right there. I just wanted to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
How you feel about all the cussing and the ad hominems and everything that's talking out there?
I feel like Shakka is how can I say this? Because I like dude, and I don't want to come off like I don't.
But you can see clearly that he didn't even know what it was, our dissertation. He obviously didn't know what it was, so his whole rant was literally about nothing.
I feel like Shakka was being overly emotional. I'm just gonna say what it was. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, I think Damon Richardson has a reputation of being intellectually pristine, right? And so the perception, even though I disagree with it, the perception is that Polite punked out. And so while I don't think Shakka is attempting to punk out, he don't look like he punking out, he look like he want to smoke. There is an intimidation factor. And so I think the aggression level was at a 10 when it didn't have to be. I don't think he understood what it meant to be at the point where it's all but a dissertation when you're getting your PhD. And I don't think his queen knew. I could be wrong with respect to the.
Obviously they didn't know, because it's a simple Google search and it's a Wikipedia term in which they would tell you that you are considered whatever that field is as a PhD, even with an ABD. It's a quick Google
right.
search.
Either that or they knew and they was just taking shots and thinking the audience. Either way.
Yeah.
But he coming at it too strongly for him to know, not just being trying to be deceptive. I don't think he knew.
Right.
And so the aggression level, the cursing, the ad hominems, I think it was turned up because, okay, I'm going against somebody that got some weight. I'm going against somebody who is intellectually astute and who may be a little above my weight class. And so
let me lie to discredit.
As we continue, you will see him start to get more comfortable, like, wait a minute, I'm not necessarily out of my league here. Let's, and it actually calms down quite a bit. But I think at first he was being extra aggressive and overly emotional about it, because there is a intimidation factor. Because when you can't talk about what you've done and you bring your lady in to talk about what she's done, that to me, that's a problem in and of itself. Because why even bring it up if you're not gonna talk about what you understand what I'm saying? In other words, if I can't say I've done XYZ and that's how I know, it really ain't no sense in me bringing somebody else in, whether it's my lady or not, to try to
discredit somebody.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of that was kind of off center to me. But
right. I just want to get your answer from that, because like I said, I feel like ad hominem, especially if it comes to people who call themselves as intellectuals. Now, if you know that you're intimidated by this person based off of his education, then you would want to get on this person's level to show that, okay, even if I come into contact with one of these type of people, then I'm able to handle myself as such. You don't want to handle yourself the same way that you would in a barbershop to barbershop cats that you would handle yourself if you was at a university or a college. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like, of course he was intimidated, and I feel like he had to go back to hood tactics to try to get the audience to feel like, well, whatever Damien says, you can discredit it, because of course you and I know Sarnetta likes to say the most intelligent chat room on YouTube and all that, but you and I know that a lot of these people don't know these terms, and a lot of people do root for Shakka, and just because Shakka said it, they would take his version of what an ABD is rather than actually going to go look it up, or even knowing that what Damien said was true about it. You see what I'm saying? But even in this video, before we get to all that, in this video, Damien never came and said that he had a PhD. The first thing he said was that he was a PhD student. So it was really unnecessary. But we can start the video back. I just wanted to see how you felt about all the ad hominems and the
It was a little crazy to me. But like I said, I kind of think that's what it was. I think once he got his center back and he realized I'm not out of my depth. Then I think he calmed down quite a bit. Cause look, bro, I got a GED.
Right.
I've had some college, and I tell people all the time, if you want me to pull my grades in history and my grades in my theology classes, my mythology classes, I will, because it's on point. But I can't brag about a degree or nothing else because I didn't finish. But I feel like I can have a conversation with almost anybody on a particular subject, and I don't feel away. And what I'm out of depth on, then I'm out of depth. Just like with what we was talking about earlier with that phrase the dude threw at me that I had never heard. I just had never heard it. So, you know.
But if you give me time to look it up, I'm gonna know what it is.
Exactly. And I'm
right. I feel you.
I might know more about it than you do.
Than you do. Right. And that's how I am. You know, like notice earlier when you told me about that term, I went straight go look it up, read it. Oh, okay, that's what that means. Really, I just didn't know about that term. But yeah, but I feel you too, bro, because I don't have nothing but a high school education myself. But I'm like you. I can feel like I can sit in a room with anybody depending on what the subject matter is, you know, and even if I am in a room where I don't know a lot about the subject matter, I'm not gonna step outside of my lane. You know what I'm saying? But
and I just want to say it to the family, when we throw that video up when he went on Garfield channel, you're gonna see he wasn't out of his depth at all when he was in the room with them brothers. And I'm speaking of our brother, Nobody. As a matter of fact, they wasn't quite on his level. But y'all will see that video when we throw it up. We're gonna get back into it. And bro, do me a favor, if you can talk a little bit louder when you need to get my attention, and I'm gonna turn the video down a little bit too to make sure I hear you.
Okay, no, keep the video up. Just be checking the chat. I just text it or something that way.
Well, that and with that, I can't really see it because we got it on full screen. So,
okay, no problem. I got you.
Now you can throw it in Messenger if that'll be better.
Yeah, I can do that too. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
She can't speak to what I'm talking about. When you have finished your coursework and you are at the stage of dissertation, you are all but dissertation, you literally are considered having a doctoral degree. I am not saying that I am finished. You heard me say that my PhD is in progress. I am ABD. But people who are ABD are considered they are considered to have a doctoral degree. The dissertation is what gives them the PhD title. But to have the degree means they went through the program. I am already through that part of the program. So it doesn't matter that she's a PhD student. She's at an earlier part of the program than me. The fact is that my education can be accounted for. I am a PhD student, which means that I'm not an intellectual fraud. At the end of the day, I've gotten further than anybody on your program, including this dude. So it doesn't matter that you bring your girl in to try and discredit what I am saying. I am not in a fake program. I'm in a regionally accredited program. I've got in that program because I am intellectually astute. You don't even have a bachelor's degree. So you're not even intellectually in the conversation. You can't even get in the ring with me intellectually. And dishonest about what? Name one thing. And that wasn't even dishonest.
Shakka,
you can't name one thing.
Shakka, hold on 1 second. Hold on, David. Hold on 1 second. Why don't we put this PhD conversation aside for 1 second and let's deal with some topics? Instead of we going back and forth, personal shots and all that stuff, let's have a conversation. What is it, Damon, what is it you want to bring up last night on Sonetta to Shakka? Let's start with that. And then Shakka, you ask a question after. Go ahead, Damon.
Hold on, are we both being heard? Because you don't have to mute our mics.
No, it's fine, it's fine. Y'all gonna have a discourse right now. But I want the reason why I stopped everybody because it don't sound good through the YouTube. It sounds crazy, based on the comments. So what I want to ask is, what is the one thing? Ask the question you wanted to ask Shakka last night that you weren't allowed to. David.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, I already asked him for a debate on atheism, theism and atheism. And he has not agreed to that debate yet. That's number one.
What?
So hold on. I'm making my statement.
Oh, go ahead, brother. I didn't know you could hear me. My problem.
Okay, yeah. So this whole notion about running and all of that other stuff, you know that that's an absolute lie. Number two, to be more specific about what you were talking about last night, you make all of these claims, you do all of this cussing, and like apologists and preachers are ignorant. I can't stand them MFs and all this other stuff. All of that is dumb. But you don't really have a leg to stand on about anything that you're talking about.
Hey, yo, this is his question. Ready? This dude is a fucking crowd. This is his question.
Okay.
Hold on. Who's a fucking crowd?
Okay.
This dude is a fucking crowd.
Say whatever you want to say.
So why you lying people telling me you challenged me to a debate about atheism? This is the first I'm fucking hearing about this. What is wrong with you? All you do is lie. Yeah, all you say
Hold on.
out of your mouth.
Shakka,
What's wrong with you?
hold on. Shakka, let me hear the question. What's the question?
No. He used his question moment. Let me ask a question.
I'm still
This question moment.
And then you got to mute man. I said you got to mute
Okay, my question is, hold on. That out of your mouth a lot.
I'm not done. I'm not done.
You should have just asked the question then.
Listen, I'm not done. You should have just waited for me to get done.
All right, go ahead, Pastor Richardson. Go ahead.
Taking so long. That's it. Are you doing a sermon? Are you answering the question?
Hey, listen. All that long-windedness you did last night to say absolutely nothing, dude.
Hey, hold on. David, let me explain something to you for a second, David.
No.
Hold on. I want to be David. I'm trying to be civil with you for a second. Listen, I don't want David.
Hold on. Okay, let me take both of y'all out. Y'all, listen, man. I would love to have a great.
Like this again. I don't know what it is. Something about Pastor Richardson and get under Shakka's skin. And I don't know Shakka personally, so I couldn't say what that is. But something about that brother get under my dude's skin.
I think they expect for some of these pastors to sit back and not say nothing, turn the other cheek type of style of, you know what I'm saying? And when somebody is, just as aggressive, but not as, combative when it comes to like cuss words and stuff like that, then yeah, Damon not backing down.
Yeah, so you feel like maybe Shakka was expecting him to back down because he a pastor, because Shakka didn't win against Hebrew Israelites that didn't back down.
Right, yeah, no, I don't think he was expecting him to back down. I mean, Shakka, a lot of Shakka persona, even in person, he do try to come off intimidating, and since he thought that he caught Pastor Richardson in a lie with the PhD thing, that even, in my opinion, gave him more of a reason for him to believe that he can be more aggressive, because he felt like he caught him in some kind of lie. So I feel like that's where a lot of it was coming from as well,
Yeah, I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, this is just.
If you wanna kind of stop it and fast forward it just a little bit, because they're gonna kind of argue for a little bit before they kind of break it down and just start talking.
Gotcha.
But it's up to you though.
Yeah, I paused the recording, so let's see. I'm gonna go to the 15-minute mark and see where we at.
Yeah, to say just when they stop talking about the degrees and stuff and start actually getting into the questions.
None of it.
Yeah, he wouldn't let that go for a minute.
Yeah, it calmed down right probably about 5 or 6 minutes after where we stopped at.
Exchanges where people can go back.
Didn't answer the question, and his attempt.
Of Christianity, the so-called founder of Christianity. Because I'm looking forward to it like you are. Okay? So
yeah, right after this. Yeah. That's where they started.
There is no reason to be anxious. I have a feeling that you and I are going to be happy.
What you think? Go forward or let it go?
Like right there, yeah, like right there.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Having a very long dialogue, right? So this is probably our first exchange. It's a little bit excitable because we all have a lot of things.
This long-windedness. I'm trying to ask you what question you have.
After all your line, hold on, please. I'm trying to be civil with you, but you're not making it easy. I'm trying to get us to a place. Listen, I'm trying to get you and me to a place where we can actually have an actual discussion without all of the yelling and without all of the dispersion. Because I'm looking forward to it like you are. Okay? So, truthfully speaking, I really don't have any questions that I can think of because so now you want to talk past me.
I mean, you don't have a question, so let me respond.
Well, hold on. I wasn't. Yeah, what are you going to respond to if I don't have a question? So let me say.
I'm going to respond to what you just said last.
All right, but before you do that, bro, can you give me a second? So I have a question. Can you give me a second? Here's my question to you, brother.
No, man.
And this dude got psychological issues.
No. It's not with the games. It's not with the games.
Nah, you got psychological issues, brother. I think you need some help.
No. I'm just not with the games.
No, I'm listening to the.
All right, this is what I'm gonna do, man. Cause this ain't going nowhere, family. This is not going anywhere. Shakka, I'm gonna say to Shakka right now. Ask the brother a question. Please ask the brother a question.
Okay, here's my question.
Yes, sir.
My question is simply this: if Christianity did not come from Africa, if the founder of Christianity, the so-called founder of Christianity, did not come from Africa, right? If the literature did not come from Africa, I'm sure some of it did. I have no problem with that. I could concede that. I have no problem with that. But my point is that if it came from Palestine, and everybody I'm sure can agree on that, right? At least that's the running story, that it came from Palestine. If it came from Palestine, why are African people obligated to be spiritually obligated to this worldview and to this religion? I think that's a fair question. I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm not trying to drag you through the grass. I think it's a fair question, and we can have a civil conversation. You just got to slow your anxiousness down, brother. I'm not running away from you like somebody else did. I'm here trying to.
Now, I thought that was a good question because I find myself asking that question a lot. I thought that was actually a really good question because to me, I always say if I'm going to have a spiritual tradition, why not have that spiritual tradition be, at the very least, indigenous to where my people originate? Now, I'm not saying that it got to be a specific, it don't have to be the Ifa tradition, the Yoruba tradition, the Zulu tradition, the Kemetic tradition, etc. But at least it should be indigenous to where my people originate. And so I thought that was a good question.
All right. No, I agree. I think that was a good question too. And I like the way that Damon Richardson answered it as well, where if something is true, does it matter if it comes from your people or not? You know, people convert to things, let's say Christianity. There are people who converted to it based off its own merits and not based off of anything else. You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't have to be from your background or your people if it's true. So, you know, that's where I would stand with that.
Gotcha. Let's keep going.
To engage you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So again, as you can see, as everybody heard, and I'm done because I got other things to do, but I'm going to say this. As everybody heard, Shakka did not answer the question. He did not answer the question. He dismissed it because he can't answer the question. And he knows that if he could answer the question, his whole argument just shot itself in the foot. So he sidestepped it to say, well, it doesn't really matter where they got it from, and went through all of this. It went through several revisions and all kinds of ridiculousness that he can't prove. So he couldn't answer the question, and his attempt at answering it was disingenuous. He deflected and he went somewhere else. So right away, you just got 1-0 right there because you can't even answer the question. Number two, you keep going back to this whole thing about me lying, right? I've not lied about anything, right? In that comment thread, I was asking in the comment thread for the debate. And I may be mistaken if it was about, in fact, I know I am mistaken if about the atheism and theism. So let me retract that. That was with Ankh. That one was with Ankh. So I stand corrected on that. I do stand corrected on that. I challenge Ankh to the debate on theism and atheism. So I wasn't lying. I did confuse you and Ankh, but I did challenge you in that thread to a debate. So I'm not being disingenuous or dishonest about that. So pardon my being incorrect about particularly who I was talking to. But in the thread, I did challenge you multiple times to a debate. I said we can set it up. We can do a debate anytime. So I did challenge you. So I'm not lying about that. Again,
do you have?
Yeah.
All right. So I got to get out of here. But I'm trying to figure out if I could get some questions and some quick answers between you and Shakka. Hey, Shakka, you back on?
You can pause there for a second, bro.
Quick, rapid fire responses.
I just wanted to point out that was commendable because he acknowledged that he made a mistake at the same time, acknowledging that it was a different person, but he did do what he said he did. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree. I agree that he realized he made a mistake and he admitted it. I think that may have went a long way also to sort of putting Shakka at ease or calming him down a bit. I think he was headed towards that anyway, but I think that kind of solidified it, if you know what I mean.
All right, yeah, that's cool. I just wanted to point that out too. Cool. That's good.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
So let me, I'm going to answer his question. He just asked a question. I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
But I wanted to respond again. Like I said, I wanted to respond to his statements before. To sit here and make it seem like I'm an intellectual fraud based on what I said, I qualified my statements. So there's nothing dishonest about that. So to carry that notion is disingenuous and it's completely unnecessary. So that's number one. So I haven't lied about anything, and you don't have record of me lying. Number two, let's get down to your question. The logic of your question suggests that if Christianity did not start in Africa, why is it even necessary for it to spread into Africa?
I didn't say that. He put argument.
I just said the logic.
That's not the logic. That's your logic. That's not my logic.
Garfield. Now, you had me on mute when he was talking.
Okay, I'll be quiet. You ain't got to mute me. Go ahead.
So the logic of your question is that Christianity started in Palestine. It didn't start in Africa. Why is it necessary for Africans to adapt to a Christian worldview? If it didn't,
you repeat my words, I said to be spiritually obligated.
Again, it's the same thing, man.
No, it's not the same thing. You're trying to redefine it, which is what you do.
See what I mean, Garfield? And he's saying that I'm dishonest?
Am I being? Oh, wow.
That is being dishonest. Okay. I'm rephrasing the logic of what you are saying. Okay. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
And listen, by the way, Shakka, I don't have nothing against you.
I don't have nothing against you. Thank you for a lot, actually. I enjoy your videos. I think, to me, you're the most exciting person in the whole apologetics team. So be good.
Hey, listen, mad respect for you too, man. This is what it is, but I don't have nothing in my heart against you, man.
So why don't you just hit me up on Facebook so we can link up? Because all this shit is crazy.
Okay, no, we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely do that. But I'll just wrap up my answer.
Go ahead, wrap up your answer, brother.
Okay, yeah. So that's essentially the logic of your argument. But the reality is that when we're talking about worldviews, it doesn't matter if a worldview began in one location and ended up in another location. The worldview has to be judged on the merits of whether it is true, whether the veracity.
I know we're gonna get into his answer, but what did you think of the admiration they showed for one another with regards to, I guess, what they do or the information they disseminate, etc.
I love it, man. You know, I feel like that's how intellectual conversations should be. You know, you should be able to sit down and talk to a person as casual as you and I are talking and be able to agree to disagree. And even if it do get a little heated, they don't have to get heated to the point to where a person have to throw ad hominems or something at a person to make it go beyond that. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I love that they came together.
No doubt, no doubt.
Of the claims of that worldview. And so the reality is that Christianity is unlike other worldviews. Even Kenyan scholar, Dr. John Mbidi, made this claim. He said, Christianity on the continent of Africa is so old that it can rightly be considered traditional African indigenous religion. And so the fact is that there are some compatibilities with African traditional religion. And I have lectured on ATR. I'm very familiar with that whole issue. There are obviously incompatibilities with it, but the reality is that it doesn't matter that a thing is indigenous one way or the other. What only matters is the truth claims of that worldview. Okay. And the truth claims of Christianity were not forced upon Africans. They were received by Africans who were very familiar with the claims of the worldviews that they had been most familiar with. And they accepted Christianity on the basis of its own merit and its own truth claims. So you can't argue with that fact of history. Egyptians, Egyptians, real chemists accepted Christianity over and against Khemericism as they knew it, the mystery religions. Why? Because they judged the Christian worldview on its own merit and its own basis against what they knew. Same thing with African traditional religions, so forth and so on. That's what history shows us.
Now, let me ask you this, and this not so much about what they, well, it is about what they talking about, but do you agree with him that, because obviously some indigenous African people chose to be Christians of their own free will, of their own merit, of their own volition, right? But some didn't. What I find disconcerting is that Christian apologists seem to want to, and I'll say this, Black Christian apologists seem to want to acknowledge wholeheartedly that indigenous Africans embraced Christianity willingly, of their own volition, etc. But they don't seem to want to acknowledge that a lot didn't. Later on in the video, as we'll get to, he brings up the Portuguese. It's a fact that the Portuguese introduced Christianity to West Africans via slavery. Now, he talk about them bringing it to West Africa, but he don't mention slavery at all. What's your thoughts on that?
I feel like true Christianity, I don't feel like you can be forced to believe nothing. And the point that Damon Richardson was coming from, as like you said, we'll see later on in the video, he was saying that we would have to discredit the intellect of our ancestors to believe that if they already believed in something else, and if what they believed in, they thought it was true, how could somebody force them to go against that? if they was for whatever reason, slavery, this or that. If I can give an example, I stay in America. America just so happens to be a so-called Christian country. Well, let's say if Islam comes take over America, I'm a 35-year-old man. They could do whatever they want to do to me. I'm never gonna leave Christianity. And even if somebody else left Christianity and let's say flip to something else, you would have to take it based off of. Let me erase that. I take that back. That's what he was saying when it comes down to you would have to make it seem as if people were ignorant and stupid to just follow something as if, you know, as if what you believe at first was not credible to you. So he was coming from the standpoint of people who followed true Christianity. For people who converted honestly, or you know, people who were true believers, they were not forced to believe in Christianity. The people who built the churches, the people who went on from that and actually followed the teachings of Christ, not followed whatever the slave masters taught or whatever form of Christianity or whatever, however they introduced it, but the true message of the Bible. Those people who went on to carry those things out, they would have done those things based off of the merits that they found in the Bible, based off the truth claims of Christianity. That's where he was coming from with that, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at, again, I would easily agree that some people in Africa, or a great deal of people in Africa, indigenous people in Africa, chose to become Christians of their own volition. They believed the narrative. They felt like it was a better path, and they chose to do it. However, we also know that some people there was forced conversion, not only of Africans, but of other indigenous people. And the reason I would push back against your analogy of you being a 35-year-old man and there would be nothing the Arab nation could do to turn you against Christianity, that's true. But once you've gone and the generations that follow you, and they get a hold of them, be it through torture, be it through indoctrination, oppression, whatever the case may be, once they've completed their task in forcing that belief, the next generation, now it may be that, hey, we just doing this to keep them off our back, but we really believe this. But then what happens to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation? You see what I'm saying? And so it's one thing for you to stand on it where you at, but then as your kids and your kids' kids and they kids and they kids, each generation that follows is getting a little bit weaker in that Christianity as the Arab rhetoric and propaganda proliferates. And again, you have oppression, indoctrination, torture, slavery, etc. You see what I mean? And we know that is exactly what happened to our ancestors.
I mean, but see, this also comes into play too. It's also a lot of ancestors, and using me as that example, like you just did, it wouldn't, even though your analogy makes total sense, based off of how Damon Richardson was saying, if no matter what generation it is, if they're going based off the truth claims of Christianity, they're not going to leave it, period. I'm saying even if it's a child, and let's say they grew up in the Islam thing and they walk away from it for a while, and then they come back to it at an older age where they have more knowledge about this. So I mean, it's all kind of scenarios that we could bring up. But if Christianity is solely believed in based off of its truth claims, no matter what generation you're in, no matter who's in control of a country or any of that, then yeah, I feel like it'll still be carried on. I don't feel like you can force somebody to believe anything, and I feel like in trying to force somebody to believe something, I feel like they would majority rebel or go against it at a certain point of time because they never embraced it in the first place. And I feel like I feel like that can be said for Christianity too. Like I know people who have walked away from Christianity, let's say because their parents was too holier than thou, or they was too strict, or they was so, you know what I'm saying? So I can't say that just because it's Christianity, based off the method that a person used, can't make a person walk away from it. But it still goes back to those people who follow Christ based off of the merits of the Bible and its truth claims, you know, who have evidence of it or researched it or however you want to look at it, they're going to believe in it based off of that. And if we look at our ancestors back then, they would have known more truth about those stories that happened back in those times than we would have, you know, 2,000 years from now. So they would have had more knowledge of if this person did this or this person did that or said this or said that or who was real or didn't exist, you know, and all that. So you get where I'm coming from? So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And only again, the pushback I would have is, so we know that the sub-Saharan slave trade occurred before the transatlantic slave trade, and it was done by Arab Muslims. And you have a large contingent of Africans, indigenous Africans, who are still Muslim to this day because of that indoctrination, oppression, and subjugation, right? And so it don't matter how they've heard the quote unquote truth of Christianity, they ain't moving off of Islam because it got in them. And each subsequent generation embraced it even more. So while that first generation probably pushed back against it quite a bit, the second generation probably a little more, and the third generation, etc., eventually that thing settled in. And so now you have a large contingent of indigenous Africans who are not Christian, they're not practicing African spiritual tradition, they are Muslims. And it don't matter about the quote unquote truth of Christianity or what I believe should be they indigenous African spiritual tradition. They stuck in Islam because of what happened to their ancestors. So you got a prime example of how a thing can be superimposed on you by your oppressor and you don't let that go. They kill in the name of Islam, Allah Akbar, because they were indoctrinated with it on a multi-level scale, and that's where they at. And I believe the same thing happened with Christianity in a slightly different way. And while you believe that's the hardcore truth, Pastor Richardson believe that's the hardcore truth. Those,
I mean, because that wasn't the whole thing. I mean, we would have to account for the missionary Portuguese who spread Christianity through trade, even before the slavery even came into play. That was where Damon was coming from, as you play the video more. Before the Portuguese even took over, when we talking about introduced Christianity to West Africa, we're not talking about through the slave trade, because you can be under somebody and don't believe what they believe. He's talking about the missionaries. He's talking about the people who was working through the trade way before you know, they got in control of that place. So that's where he's coming from, not from the not that they was captured as slaves and then while they were slaves they became Christians. Then he's not saying it in that aspect. That's why he didn't mention slavery.
But now, do you understand what I'm saying about those?
Yeah, about Islam. I mean, but still, again, even when it comes to Islam, I mean, but no, but I agree too, though. You know, I mean, just off of a human being, even if I didn't believe something, I would practice it and do it. I mean, to a certain extent, based off who I am, if my life was in danger. So I can understand how those Muslim how Muslims has took over many countries over there due to, you know, force of death and things like that, you know what I'm saying, to make a person even practice it, even if you wouldn't believe it, you would think I would believe it because I'm not trying to die. But at the same time, for those other people, not the ones who are practicing it off of fear, for the ones who practice it, who cold-heartedly believe it, I believe that they would have to have converted from whatever they formerly believed in too, based off the truth claims that are in that are in the Quran, because the truth, I mean, the Quran has some truth claims in it too. Now,
Right.
it's a lie overall, but
So
it
now
has some stuff.
this is my point. So again, if you can acknowledge what happened with Islam, you don't think that the same thing occurred on any level with Christianity?
Based off what they're talking about when it comes to the Portuguese and through the missionaries before the slavery, now I think that's a totally different subject. Really, I mean, now
remember I prefaced it and said that it does have something to do with what they're talking about, but it veers off of it a little bit.
Right. Yeah, you did say that. Yeah. That's what I was saying. Yeah, if it was another total argument just off of how Christianity spread it overall in other places and all that, we could argue that point. But based off of the Portuguese, you know, and how that spread it before the takeover of slavery, that was mainly where he was coming from, and that was the part that I was agreeing with.
Gotcha. Let's get back into it.
History was not forced on any African. Christian.
Bro, I'm gonna let it rock, but I'm gonna get ready to go grab me something to drink. I had paused it for a second, but I'm about to start it back, and I'm gonna run it back.
Okay.
Christianity arrived in the continent of Africa within the first 2 or 3 years of the Jesus event. It arrived in Africa, of what we consider Africa, peacefully, never forced, not like Islam, right? So the reality is that you have to insult the intelligence of those Africans who staked belief and faith in the claims of Christianity upon its own merits. And you have to suggest that they did so in ignorance to the worldviews that they had been accustomed to. So.
Could you repeat that last part? Because I didn't quite. I'm really, literally, genuinely trying to understand what you're saying, because I don't want to disagree just for the sake of being disagreeable. So you said that last part about they accepted it, something about the ignorance. You said they did so in light of.
I am saying that Africans accepted Christianity over and against, and I'm not saying all of them. I'm talking about the ones who became Christian.
Okay.
They accepted it on the basis of the claims of Christianity, not by force. And the Portuguese did not force Christianity on Africans. There's no history of Christianity being forced upon the Africans. And so throughout history, Africans accepted Christianity because of its own claims, because of the meritorious veracity of Christianity itself, over and against the worldviews that they were already indigenously familiar with. So they were not duped. They were more familiar with their own worldviews than you and I are of their worldviews, and they still accepted Christianity. So for your claim, or for your claim to have any merit, several things have got to happen. Number one, you've got to posit this idea that they were duped. Number two, you've got to suggest that these people were ignorant of their own worldviews and could not do comparative religion, comparative study. In order to,
my thing went out for a second. Can you repeat that last part?
Yeah. So in order for your argument to hold up,
yes, sir,
you have to suggest that these people, that Africans had Christianity forced upon them, and that they were not intelligent enough to comparatively look at the claims of Christianity over and against their own worldviews that they were indigenously familiar with and make the choice for Christianity. That's what you got to do. So you've got to insult the intelligence of Africans who did have spiritual worldviews such as animism, polytheism, so forth and so on. And you've got a myriad of worldviews throughout the continent of Africa, but you've got to insult their intelligence.
Can I ask you a question? I've been very quiet. I think I've been very quiet. You named a number of the worldviews that the Africans had on the continent. Did they have any monotheism at all on the continent at that time?
Did Africans have monotheism? Yeah. So there were various forms of monotheism that even existed throughout the ancient world.
Can we pause it right there?
Egypt.
Go ahead. You there? You there, bro? You there, bro?
Hello? Oh, my bad, man. I thought I was talking and I was on mute. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Let me resume the recording. 3,
Okay.
2, 1. Go in.
Okay, yeah, man. If you caught that right there, did you see based off of what Damon and Richardson said, Shakka didn't have no rebuttal for that because as I was alluding to earlier, that Damien wasn't saying all, as he said, he was only talking about some, and he was talking about those who took Christianity based off of its own truth claims and its own merits. And as we know, a lot of those early African church fathers and those people within the 1st and 2nd century in Africa who adopted Christianity, those were the ones who was building the churches and carrying it on. You know, because just like anybody, if something is forced on you, once you get the freedom to do what you want to do, then you're not pretty much going to do that anymore if you don't believe in it. But for the ones who took Christianity based off his own truth claims and merit, I think that Shakka understood what Damien was saying and the way that he gave his answer. And I wanted to see if you noticed that Shakka just went on to the next subject rather than even address it.
Yeah, I peep game because it's not even something that should be argued, because it's clear that some of them made, a conscious decision to move to Christianity. Now, one thing I do want to comment on that he said, when he said you would have to insult their intelligence. So now are we questioning the intelligence of those who decided to stay ensconced in a African spiritual tradition?
No, he was saying that Shakka would have to question the intelligence of the ones who decided not to believe in it, because he making it like he was saying Shakka would have to make it like our ancestors was dumb in order not to take whatever they chose to believe in, including Christianity. If they chose to convert from what they was just say raised up believing in or whatever the situation is, for them to convert to Christianity, you would have to assert that our ancestors were dumb or something. You know, that they couldn't look up whatever they used to believe in and compare it to what they believe in now and make a decision on what's true and what's false. That's what he was saying.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Not that the ones who stayed were dumb. The ones who stayed, they probably did a compare and contrast as well, and they decided to stay. But they are no more smarter or any more dumber than the ones who decided to leave or stay, which wouldn't be any less smart, any more dumber. They were full-grown adults with enough intelligence to make a decision based off of what they deemed to be true. That's what he was saying.
Agreed. Let's keep going.
Had a form of monotheism. Okay. But let's nuance what monotheism looks like, because not all monotheism is the same. There's a monotheism that is what you would call
Hi, it's Sam Barker here from the Motley Fool. Behind me is Landmark Mall.
We don't want to see you, man.
Exclusive
right.
Monotheism. It's really more like what you would call henotheism.
I'm very familiar.
Right, and that is the idea that other gods exist.
Right.
But we are only going to worship one of them.
Did you say something, bro?
Oh no, I didn't say that.
That is a type of monotheism.
Would that be something like place no other God before me? Like something like that, right?
Right. That's
henotheism. Okay.
That statement could be indicative of henotheism.
Absolutely.
But not necessarily. Okay. Right? So the monotheism of Israel was not exclusive monotheism or henotheism.
Right.
It was absolute monotheism. It was that Yahweh was God alone, that beside him, Isaiah 40, there is no other. And so that kind of monotheism is unique in the world.
I'm asking a question. I just want to ask a question. But what Yahweh who before we said place no other God before me?
Absolutely, yeah. That's
How can that be absolute monotheism if they're referring to other gods being placed before?
No. So that's not what that means, Shaka. What that means is that other gods were being worshipped. And so for Yahweh to say, other gods before me, it's not Yahweh acknowledging that these gods truly exist. But that's acknowledging is that these gods exist in worship.
But you and I both know that that's a matter of interpretation. But whether they exist in worship or not, it's still a reference to their existence. Because you can't be jealous about something that does not exist. So I think we can agree on that.
To some degree, yeah. So again, when I say we're squabbling about what existence means.
Right.
But when I say they don't exist, I'm saying those gods were not real. Mm-hmm. And I can show you many statements where Yahweh ridicules the existence of those gods,
right,
in terms of them not being real.
Right.
So that's not a matter of interpretation. The position of Scripture is that those gods didn't exist truly, right, only in the mind of people who were worshiping them, right, which is why you find the type of polemicism and ridicule, right, in the Old and the New Testament.
Right.
Can you pause it right there, bro?
As
when I went on to Garfield's channel, that's the subject that Brother Morpheus had brought up, and he was asking how could Damon say that the God of the Bible should tell the Israelites not to worship any other gods if those gods only existed in the minds of those people. How could he say that when the God of Israel only exists in the mind of Israel? All right. So that was what our topic was about, that me and him had got into it when I went on Dagger Squad.
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I to me, I know where Morpheus was coming from, but I also see where Richardson is coming from with regard to they don't have to be real if
the worship,
if they in the minds of the people. In other words, just to put it in layman terms, get it out your mind.
I mean, even if you want to go as far as that, Morpheus is asking about a scripture. So if you're asking us, coming from that text and God relaying it to the Israelites, what God means by that in that text. So that's where Damien was coming from. But then Morpheus tried to flip it and just take the scripture totally out of it. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I agreed with him. If you want to take the scripture totally out of it and just take out why did God say that, cool. Now, if you're asking me, does the God in everybody's mind exist in their mind, then yeah, I can agree with you on that. But he wasn't coming from that instance. He was asking, how could the God of the Bible tell Israel not to do that if he exists only in their mind too? Well, he's talking to them. So whatever perspective he's coming from, we have to take it as that. You get what I'm saying? Not the other way around. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, that's all that was. But yeah, I just want to point that out. That was my little 20 or 30 minutes that I spent on Dagger Squad.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak on where he mentioned that Kemet. He said Egypt, but of course, that's a misnomer. But I say Kemet, of course. But he mentioned that Kemet had a form of monotheism.
Right.
And that's always a point of contention with me and our brother, your co-host, the Conscious Christian Jerome Green.
Mr. Co-host to you.
Yeah. Anyway, Mr. Trader to me, but and other Christians who believe that the ancient people of Kemet worshipped multiple gods as individual deities. And so, I've spoken on this concept several times, and it just don't seem to register, or there's a refusal for it to register. But when he said that, they assumed he was talking about Akhenaten's reign. But if it was a singular reign, I think he would have been specific in talking about that particular reign. The reason I speak on it is because it's something that seems to come up here and there at least a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a year, where I have to clarify. And I'll just point out one book that everybody should check out. It's called Egyptian Divinities, The All Who Are One. It's by Mustafa Gadala. And it basically breaks down what I've continued to say with regards to what they believed. And if you read the text, it's clear. They believed that the all were one. Everything, and there's one being in existence, period. And everything in existence is an aspect of that being. The all, as it were.
Let me ask you this question. Of course, I've never read that book or whatever, but I just want to give it from Damon Richardson's position. It is a consensus that the way Christians' worldview of God is that it is unique to the world. But I want to ask you if you agree or disagree with this or not, because this is where Damon Richardson was coming from. Monotheism back then was considered that people did believe that there were other gods, but they only worshiped one God. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that in most instances, for sure.
Okay, so that's what he was saying about Kemet and the other nations. He was saying that when it came to Israel and their worldview of God, they wasn't saying as in like there are multiple gods, but we only worship one God. Israel worldview was that there is only one God. But in Kemet and in other nations, it was more like they acknowledged that there were other gods, but you would be considered monotheism if you just worship that one God rather than worshiping all of the other gods too. You get what I'm saying?
Well, and I think without him specifying, we would be
no, that's what he's saying. That's exactly what he said.
That's what I'm saying. As far as Kemet though, when you say they acknowledge that there were other gods, you mean like gods of other nations, or you saying within their nation?
Oh, okay. On that aspect, yeah, I think he was speaking on gods within their own nation too.
And see, that's
and possibly gods of other nations, maybe.
That's where possibly. I would disagree. With regards to gods of other nations, whether or not they acknowledged or believed they existed, I wouldn't have a major.
You know, yeah, right, yeah.
But with regards to within their nation, that's what I'm pointing out with regards to one being in existence, period, and every other being being an aspect of that being. And that's what I mean. Now, of course, they acknowledge that Heru is an aspect of the all, or nature, so to speak, or that Sekhemaat is an aspect in reference to rage.
Oh no, I get it. I don't know if other people get it, but I get it.
If that's what he means, then I agree completely. But and with regards to acknowledging gods of other nations, because I've never read anything to the contrary or to confirm it, so I couldn't speak on it. But
speak on it, yeah.
Nation, of course, they acknowledge each aspect, but there still was the element where they were saying, these are but aspects of
the same God.
As all like, say this was America was Kemet, we would be considered aspect. That's why the afterlife was so important, because now you are returning back to the all, in the form that you came from, so to speak. So, but I just wanted to speak on that because I know it's something that me and Mr. Co-host kind of go back and forth on. And one day,
I get what you're saying, and Jerome do too, because we face that same doctrine when we're debating other Christians. You know, we have some Christians who believe that God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, they are the same entity, but just different aspects of that entity. But see, the way that the Trinity is to be taught orthodoxly is the way that we teach it, as in which, you know, you have God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They are individual in person, but one when it comes to the Godhead. And that's what's unique about it. Like, there was, according to the consensus, there was no other teaching in that way where it's just one God. It ain't like Jesus is one God, the Father is one God, the Holy Spirit is one God, and it's three gods. They're all God. And then it's not like Jesus is a piece of the Father. You know, let's say he a piece of his side, and then he just poured him out, and then he a God, and then poured the Holy Spirit out on one side, and he a God. No, all three of them existed eternally. You get what I'm saying? So that's okay. Yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. But yeah, so that's where the uniqueness come in, that even in how Damon Richardson is trying to explain the monotheism of the other nations too. As you said, if he's talking about it the way that you're talking about it, then you agree. But if he's doing it in another way, as in saying like, not that everything in nature was of this one God and everything could be its own God, but it's still the essence of this one God. If he's not saying it, I mean, if he's saying it that way, then you agree. But if he's saying it like, they believed in the sun God, moon God, this God, you know what I'm saying, then you disagree with that, right? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, I got you. Believe me, I got you, bro. Okay, yeah, we can go ahead.
Let's get back to it.
African descendant of slaves.
Yes.
I think it is right for us to appreciate the various traditions of African people.
Right.
But because those traditions are African doesn't make it right. And that's my argument.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree
right.
with that.
And so on that basis, it doesn't matter what region of the world Christianity came from. Christianity needs to be judged on the basis of its own claims and merit. Is it a worldview that can stand up against its own, that can stand up under the fire of its own claims, its own theological claims? And so that is how African people.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
From where did Christianity receive its theology?
Christianity's theology is inherently continues through the revelation of Yahweh to the Jewish people of the nation of Israel. So it is a continuation of that same revelation. There's no break in that revelation. There is no Christianity and we've got to nuance that as well, right? So what we refer to as Christianity in terms of what we see in the first century.
I'm sorry for a moment, because you kind of lost me a bit. I don't want you to lose the audience. I asked you, from whence did Christianity receive its theology? And your answer was kind of, I don't want to say ambiguous, because I'm sure that you believe what you said, and I don't doubt that you believe what you said. I just found it.
So I got you. And let me be clearer.
Okay.
So the theology of Christianity is a continuation of the theology of the Tanakh.
Right.
It's not a different theology. It is a continuation of that.
Well, I haven't really said much, so I'm asking if I just, at the very least, speak to that. I'm not going to give the kind of discourse that you're giving right now, because I'm actually enjoying listening to you, because that's the only way you can get to know somebody, by actually listening to what they actually have to say.
There you go. And listen, man, my apologies at the earlier part of the
no, there's tension
and all that negative kind of energy stuff. My apologies on that.
It's just part of what we do. As debaters and polemicists, it all comes to what we do. So I don't take any of it personal. I don't think you do. It's part of the fun of why we do what we do. It's the battle. It's our personal war, and we will always enjoy it. So don't apologize to anybody for it. Not even, we're good. You and I are very good.
Good deal. Good deal, man. Good deal.
Now, what did you think of that exchange?
I just wanted to say, it's your boy, Black Jesus Minister. No, I'm just playing.
That dude. But go ahead.
But no, of course, man. You know, any time that two people can come together, man, and come to a mutual agreement, I feel like the way that Damon are answering these questions, I feel like not only is he answering them on point, I feel like that Shakka is also learning a lesson as well. Not only in the character of who Damien is, but he's learning a lesson as in the truth and the history that Damien is saying that really can't be refuted on depending on the subject that they're talking about.
Gotcha. I personally just like the fact that the brothers could come together, and again, we could disagree without being disrespectfully disagreeable, because at the end of the day, we two black men, and it don't have to be a beef or negative connotation to the rivalry. We can be intellectual rivals without having a negative connotation. Like if we see each other, it's gonna be a situation. You know what I mean? So that part I definitely appreciate.
Me too, for real.
Let's jump back into it.
I'm enjoying it as well.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to speak to what you said for a moment. You said that Christian theology is a continuation of the Tanakh, right? So, and that it began basically with the Hebrews in their revelation. And so the only point of contention that I have with that is that, and I challenge anyone listening to look this up, all you have to do is, if you look up the origin of theology, you will not find that it begins with Hebrews. You will find that it begins with the Greeks. And you will also find that it begins with the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers, such as Thales, Pythagoras, Anaximenes, so forth and so on. So what you said was historically inaccurate. Theology does not begin with the Hebrews. Documentedly speaking, it begins with the pre-Socratic philosophers. And I'm of the perspective that most theologians within the Christian apologetics community is under the false assumption that people who subscribe to the Kemetic worldview are theologically ignorant. And so I usually ask the question, do you want to do this dogmatically? Do you want to do this systematically? Do you want to do this biblically? Do you want to do it covenant? It doesn't matter which theological approach you want to take. I'll meet you anywhere. I have no problem with that. My point is just, I think we should keep it intellectually honest, and not that you are purposefully being dishonest. I just wanted the audience to listen and to be very, very explicitly clear. Always don't believe anything that I say. Don't believe anything that my brother said, but confirm for yourself. All you have to do is go to Britannica and just type in theology or pre-Socratic philosophers and look at the origin, and it will tell you theology begins with the pre-Socratic philosophers, not with any Hebrews. So it's historically inaccurate to say that it began with Hebrews or the Tanakh.
Actually, it's not.
And see, at this point, I feel like Shakka started getting in his bag. I feel like he was feeling himself, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a good way. He started, like, you could see his confidence in what he was saying. Not that he wouldn't confident anyway, but I could see it, and he started challenging and throwing, speaking his speech, so to speak. What did you think?
I like the challenge, man, and of course I expect people to be confident, but in what he's saying about this word, he was also wrong again. You see what I'm saying? Because he was speaking of the origins of the word, not the concept of thought. And when Damon Richardson say that to him, you're gonna see him agree. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So Shakka's question was mainly, he was asking, where does Christianity get its theology from? And Damon is telling him, Christianity is the New Testament. Damon is telling him that the New Testament gets its theology from the Old Testament, which is a continuation. That's all he's saying. But Shakka is trying to say, well, how could there be a theology if the word wasn't a word? That's what Shakka is saying. How could there be a theology if the word wasn't a word? Damon is saying, well, before there was a word, the concept of the word existed, and then Shakka gonna agree to it, and then he gonna say, well, and I mean, which totally makes sense. You know, even if you just take the word out of it, where do the teachings of the New Testament come from? That's what he's asking. Our teachings of the New Testament would have to come from the Old Testament. It would have to be a continuation, seeing that the first Christians were Hebrews. They were Old Testament believers. So our theology would have to come from those people in the first century. And that's what Damon was saying. So even though Shakka was turned up and got a little lit, he was actually talking about the definition of the word rather than the concept to have his question answered on where do the New Testament gets its theology from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I feel you, and I think that sometimes, like when we wrong or we misinformed or we mistaken or whatever the case may be, the best thing to do is just admit it.
Yeah.
And move on, because it's always another salient point to be made. You don't have to harp on something that you ignorant of, or you could attain a little more knowledge of.
I mean, and yeah, I totally agree with you on that, bro. I feel like it's pride sometimes, because sometimes in trying to sound intellectual too, people can be using big words, and the other person you're talking to might don't know that word. And if you just said it in a normal way, you know, said it in a normal sentence, you know what I'm saying? I think it'll be a lot helpful for other people as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why, like, I know I preach and stuff like that, and I teach and I talk a certain way. I mean, I don't change who I am, but I talk a certain way. But I feel like I get my point across more when I'm just talking how me and you talking. You see what I'm saying? Where I can just use regular words. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And I feel like that helps get the point across rather than trying to explain our theology on such a high level where sometimes we just go over people's heads. And I feel like in some of this conversation that Damien and Shakka having, and don't get me wrong, I think Shakka is intelligent as all outdoors, but I think some of the ways that Damien is answering the question is kind of going over his head, which is why once he come back and repeat it, then Shakka agree with it. You feel what I'm saying? Because that's why I feel like some people are long-winded if they're doing it intentionally, because you can answer their question real quick, but they might not get it, and you can tell that they didn't get it by the way they asked their second question. You see what I'm saying? Towards that same question. So now I got to re-explain it, so now I got to take longer to, you know what I'm saying, to explain it, because I see that you didn't get it the first time. But yeah,
Right.
that's.
I got
you. Yeah, my bad. But yeah, go ahead.
Actually, it's not, and I'm going to show you what's flawed. I'll show you what's flawed about your argument. Right. So what you did was kind of a logical bait and switch, right? So you took a term, theology, right, from two Greek words, theos and logia.
Yes.
And then you etymologically link that to the Greeks, because obviously that word is Greek. But I'm not talking about the etymology of the word. I'm talking about the conceptual framework, right, of theology. That does not, the theology does not start with Greek people.
No, I don't think it does. It does not start with Greek people. I agree with that. It actually starts with the Egyptians, but I agree with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm talking about
you. See?
Where does Christian theology come from? Christian thinks about God. Right. It's conceptual framework, right, about who God is and what God is like.
Right.
That is a continuation of what we find in the Tanakh. Okay. And now, mind you, the Tanakh is a revelation that started with people that God called out even before the emergence of the nation of Israel. So Abraham was not Jewish.
Right.
Abraham is the father of those who are Hebrew. Right. But God revealed to Abraham, and so what we find in the Tanakh is a
I
continuation.
love you, man. I just got to tell you, you know, you are the person I've been looking for the longest, because it really sucks who are not really as convicted and as resolute as you are. You know, you might not understand this, but for me, you are my dream come true, brother. You understand what I'm saying? Because arguing against people who are, I guess, what you call the sheep, arguing against them, it just doesn't. It just doesn't do. It doesn't do it for me, you know. And it's just such a breath of fresh air to hear someone who can modulate through history, backwards and forwards, and so please just continue on. I'm loving listening to you.
We can pause there right there, bro.
Yeah, sure.
Shakka funny. Go ahead. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Let me start the recording over. Hold on. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could be biased just for a second and give Shakka a pat on his back. If you notice, Damon beating him up, bro. He body blowing him. You know what I'm saying? But Shakka, he not saying you right, but he's saying you right by the way he acting. You know what I'm saying? He telling him that he right by giving him them props like that based off them answers. Because as I was alluding to earlier, Shakka was using the etymology of the word and where it came from. Damon was using the concept. Now, Shakka gave the concept of theology to Egypt. And I'm pretty sure Damon disagreed with that, but there wasn't an argument, though. So even though Shakka can agree that, hey, this concept started in Egypt. Okay, we'll give you that. But the bigger framework is that since you agree that it didn't start with the Greeks, then you can't say that the Christianity New Testament theology started with Greek. So that's where he was coming from. You see what I'm saying? And Shakka agreed to it. Shakka agreed to it. Yeah, I love you, man.
Now I know you say he beating Shakka up. I'm gonna say this. I think Shakka, for all the and the aggression at the beginning.
Yeah, he's getting info now.
I think he understands that this is somebody who, from an intellectual level, deserves respect.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I have to
whether you agree with his ideology or where he's coming from or not, this is somebody who deserves his respect intellectually. This not a Hebrew who talking out of his neck, talking about we was in Africa and the Europeans came and just got us but didn't get no African. Like, this ain't somebody who not making sense. This is somebody who is historically accurate, who is historically astute, etc. So I think that's the angle Shakka coming from. I don't know. You know, I wouldn't say he getting beat up so much as he just understand this not somebody who I can take lightly. This ain't somebody who I can just throw little nonsensical things out with. This is somebody I got to take seriously and I got to be up on game with. So let me let him speak. Let me hear him out, and where I can get my stuff in, I'm gonna get it in. But I really want to see, you know, where it is this brother coming from. And Damian Richardson may not even be giving him all the work he could give him. But I think Shakka right now, he trying to fill him out. He being humble. He being a brother. You know, he not taking them lightly, so to speak.
Right. And like I can agree with you on that. And the only reason why I'm saying, I know they're not debating. Only reason why I'm saying beating them up is because in certain instances he asking him questions. Then in certain instances he making statements. When he make those statements, and if those are statements that Damien are disagreeing with, which is what he was saying about the New Testament and etymology, once Damien come back and reply to that statement, then we see Shakka agreeing to it. Now, the reason why I know Shakka is intellectual as well, because if he know enough about what Damien is saying, he can agree to stuff that he may know about, even if he was wrong about it. So that's why I'm saying he's intellectual, because another person could have said, I mean, Damon could have said the same thing he just said to another person, and just in fear of them being wrong because they don't even know where Damon talking about or coming from, they would just have an argument for argument's sake. So like I said, that's why I'm giving Shakka his pat on his back too in that aspect, because to even know where a person coming from, if it's a time period, a concept, or whatever, and then to agree to it, you know what I'm saying, at the same time, then yeah, that's big props.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's jump back in.
Your gracious words, man. And again, I'm glad that the conversation took this turn so that people can hear Black men respectfully discourse, dialogue, intellectually, without negativity and all of that, man. Because it doesn't really have to be that. And I appreciate Garfield for creating this platform for this discussion. You know, but what I was saying is that
if my man was wearing this, I would be all over him.
Boy, he monetized the mess out of this one, didn't he?
Felt really good, yeah.
I'm here.
Really sexy.
He knew he was gonna get some views on this one.
when we're talking about what theology is conceptually, that doesn't come from the Greeks. We're talking about how people think about God. That I'm talking about the concept of that. That's what theology is. It's the study of it, the conceptual framework behind it. What we find in Christian theology is a unique footprint that comes through the thinking about God from the patriarchs, through the prophets, through the men of the great assembly like Ezra, so forth and so on, coming through that, capitulating in the person and the work of Jesus Christ. Right. And so Christianity's unique approach to theology uses Jesus as its hermeneutic, right, to look back at the Tanakh.
Okay.
And its means of interpreting it.
Brother, sorry.
Hey, Shakka, hold on. Before you go any further, I want to say something major just happened in the sport world, and I just want to give these brothers a shout out for that. We know brother Jacob Blake died in Wisconsin, and Milwaukee Bucks have refused to play Game 5 today because of the shooting of Jacob Blake. I think that's very courageous. And the players, I think they took it to a whole nother level. To not play a game because of what happened to Jacob Blake is a major, major stance. I just want to put that out there. All right? Go ahead, brother.
Okay. It kind of hurts. It hurts a lot just to hear that, because I think we were all pulling through for the brother. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And so I guess I'm going to, whether it's in poor taste or in good taste, I'm going to dedicate my next statement in response to my brother Damon about what he said about Christian theology. With your permission, Damon. Damon, may I ask you a question? And it's kind of personal, but I think we'll just put our conversation in context. May I ask how old you are?
I'll be 48 in November.
Okay. So what that means is, for the most part, something I want you to be aware of, I'm your elder. Okay, I'm your elder by quite a few years. Okay, I'm in my mid-50s, and I've been doing this for a really long time. Okay, and most people.
Did Shakka say he in his mid-60s?
No, he said his mid-50s.
Gotcha. Okay.
When they see me, they think I'm a lot younger than I am, and I've had that issue with Jabari, which actually created kind of a rift between us, because he thought he was speaking to a younger brother, and I had to actually pull his coattail to the fact that he is significantly my junior. Okay? So I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that when you're speaking to me, you're not speaking to one of these young persons out here who is not well read. And it's true, I don't have a degree. It's true, I am a high school dropout. But the one thing that I learned about education many years ago, that education is free. A degree does not imply that you're educated. It is also an old term that old people from the old school used to use. And I'm sure you're old enough to remember it. It's called, the term was an educated fool. I'm not saying that you're one, so please do not take that in any way, form, or fashion. No. I'm just making a general statement about people who happen to have education, but they're some of the most ignorant people that you will ever meet. Because they tend to be more so, rather than epistemological in their approach, they will take a belief approach, which is not usually commensurate with scholarship. So here's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to quote Martin Luther King Jr., somebody who I think we all can pass the credibility. I think everybody in the audience, to some degree, can appreciate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. passing the smell test of credibility. The man had a PhD in theology from Boston University. He didn't have one of these honorary doctorate degrees from these seminary schools, although he did attend Kosher and had one of the best teachers on the planet. Most people do not know who that teacher is. Okay, I do. I study infinitesimal.
Now, what are you about to get into with Dr. King? This is where I began really disliking James White and other white evangelical ministers, pastors, and some black, in particular, Bodie Bacham, because of what they critiques of Dr. King and his what they feel was his ideology. Now, what Shakka about to get into is what he was positing in college. I think it's clear as the man got older. He died at 39 years old. I think it's clear as he got older, particularly towards the end of his life, if you are to believe the words that were coming out of his mouth, that view began to change.
Yep.
But the fact that they try to hold it over his head, along with what's come out or what's been exposed as some of his personal mistakes within the confines of his marriage that were hashed out between he and his wife before his death, really gets under my skin. And the fact that it's white evangelical ministers and this, in particular, this black evangelical minister, Bodie Bacham, it really pisses me off. So I just wanted to preface that with regards to what they about to get into with regards to what Dr. King was asserting when he was in
and that's why it's good that we have other black Christian apologists out here too, who are Christian as well as pro-black, because you can get it from this point of view as well, where just as you explained, this is the same thing that Damon explained. Shakka is going to read a quote from one of Dr. King's book, but if you, like you said, look at his life updated from the time where he wrote that, you could see that he was clearly coming out of that ideology. And even if you look at what he wrote before that, he was in a different ideology. You see what I'm saying? So he was flipping through, in other words. You see what I'm saying? So he already had one word. Huh?
As we all do.
Right. If I can account for it too. Right. I can name all kind of things that I believe now, even just about the Bible that I didn't believe 2 or 3 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So we learn every day. Yeah, right. So
I'll be 44 next month. I don't even think you 39 yet.
Yeah,
I think we can both agree that man had a lot of developing left to do, despite where he already was. And we talking about a man whose intellect was, this man graduated high school at 15, graduated college at 19. So his intellect, his intelligence was never in question.
That'd be kind of like somebody going on my Facebook memory, judging me based off of when I used to tell people don't celebrate Christmas all them years ago. You gotta sound like that.
Exactly.
You know, go ahead.
So I just wanted to get into that because, like I say, Dr. King is my guy. So
and what you said, as I said, what you said is exactly what Damon Richardson is finna say. Like, don't judge Dr. King off that character right there, because he was developing from that German white theology of that time. Yeah. So yeah, you just said exactly what Damon is finna say, bro.
All right, let's go.
So I just want to quote Martin Luther King on the theology of Christianity as it relates to Jesus Christ. Okay? Can we give Martin Luther King Jr. that respect? I'm asking you that. Can we do that?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I know exactly where you're going, but
Okay, I just want to know, right? Okay, that's all. All right, so here's the quote, and I want everybody in the audience to listen. This is Martin Luther King Jr. speaking, and it's from his book, from his actual university papers, what he wrote. This is nobody speaking for Martin Luther King Jr. Okay, this is him speaking for himself. He says, we may find a partial clue to the actual rise of this doctrine, the Son of God, in the spreading of Christianity into the Greco-Roman world. I need not elaborate on the facts that the Greeks were very philosophical-minded people. Though philosophical thinking, the Greeks came to the point of subordinating, distrusting, and even minimizing anything physical. Anything that possessed flesh was always undermined in Greek thought. And so in order to receive inspiration from Jesus, the Greeks had to apotheosize him. We must remember that the logos, or what Christians call the word, the logos concept had its origin in Greek thought. It was only natural that the early Christians, after coming in contact with the Greeks, would be influenced by their thought. I rest my case. Or should I say I rest Martin Luther King's case? Please continue.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
A lot more where that came from.
oh yeah, yeah. So Shakka, that's real easy. So part of quoting that means putting some context around that. So you have to understand where, first of all, you have to understand the theological development of MLK. So MLK didn't always hold that position, and he didn't always stay with that position. So MLK, learning at theologically liberal institutions, was highly influenced by what is called German liberal Protestantism. And so he studied that and became influenced by that at an early part of his life. Putting some further historical context to what you're saying, what you have to understand is the zeitgeist. That is the spirit of the times.
I'm familiar with the term. My German is not as bad as most people would think it is. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Got you. There you go. There you go. So the zeitgeist of the times in terms of the Enlightenment period saw the emergence of German philosophers and German liberal theologians that posited an idea that was anti-Semitic. So this is the origin of that idea, that it was an anti-Semitic idea that posited the notion that Christianity was a borrow from Greek philosophy and Greek mythology. And so that idea, coming out of the Enlightenment period, coming through German Protestant liberalism, that those ideas, the zeitgeist, those ideas, not only were they, again, anti-Semitic, they were historically unfounded. And they have been largely and categorically debunked over and over and over in the last 150 to 200 years.
Hold
on. So I'm putting context around where Martin Luther King was intellectually at that time. He had become influenced by some ideas that largely, if he were alive, he would not hold to. For instance, he held to the idea that Christianity, for instance, was influenced by some of the other mythological cults. And what people are finding is, for instance, he even wrote a paper on it. One such cult doesn't come around until essentially the latter 2nd century, beginning of the 3rd century, much too late to have influenced Christianity. What history is showing us is that it was really Christianity that influenced this particular Gnostic sect. And so it would be highly unlikely that Christianity would be influenced theologically by the Greeks, for the very reason that Martin Luther King was grappling with, is that Gnosticism came from Christianity. And what you find in the apologetic writings of John and Paul, so forth and so on.
Forgive me, before you go off on a tangent, I have to stop you for one moment. Because what you're doing is, number one, you're basically presenting logical fallacies, which are red herrings and things of the like. You're speaking across points about things that we were not discussing. I was not discussing Gnosticism. I was discussing a historical statement made by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, here's the point of contention that I have with what you said. You make your claim that what you're doing is you're what we call splaining, right? You're splaining away or attempting to explain away the basis for Martin Luther King's belief. And even in doing that, you were historically inaccurate. And I have the documentation right in front of me. The ideas that Martin Luther King espoused concerning why the Greeks did in fact create the entire sonship of the whole Jesus thing and apotheosize. And for those of you who don't know what apotheosize means, it means to make into a god. And that's what Martin Luther King was saying, that it was the Greeks, when they were introduced to the narrative, that the only way that they could accept it was because they had an adverse perspective of things that were related to the flesh. They basically chose to take what some people might define as a metaphysical approach, meaning something beyond the flesh. Okay, and this is what Martin Luther King was saying. Now, what my brother Damon Richardson wants you to think is that the reason that Martin Luther King was saying this, he wants you to think that it's because he was studying at a liberal Protestant institution such as Crozier in the 1950s, and therefore the German anti-Semitism in a Protestant Christianity creeps into his academic career, which is completely false. The reason why Martin Luther King was espousing those beliefs was because of who his teacher was. His teacher was Dr. James B. Pritchard. And James B. Pritchard's approach had nothing to do with Protestant Christianity. This man is literally the man who wrote the book on ancient Near Eastern texts. In fact, I would recommend that you all look up his work. It's called Ancient Near Eastern Texts Relating to the Old Testament, 3rd edition with supplement, edited by James B. Pritchard. Look at that book, and you will see that what our brother Damon Richardson attempted to put on the platform to explain away our brother Martin Luther King's perspective on that was patently historically inaccurate, and false. I just wanted to put that out there. Just look up ancient Near Eastern texts related.
All right, what did you think of that, bro?
He did exactly what James White and them did in reverse. And like I said, Damien did exactly what you were saying. Shakka read a book from him at a certain age that he was at that time. So of course he would have grown from that theology, and that's how Damien was saying. But Damien was going into where that theology came from. That's what took him so long to explain. He was going into where that thought of mine came from, even from the teacher who taught it to Dr. King. He's showing where that would have came from. So he was just Xing out the whole argument. He was pretty much cutting off the snake's head, put it like that, before it even get down to Dr. King and why he believed it and all that.
Yeah, I kind of felt like Shakka didn't really wanna either Shakka didn't realize it was something that Dr. King wrote when he was young, or it didn't matter because it was.
He probably just not used to the arguments. I mean, he probably read the books, because when you look at the conscious community, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with having books, but they into reading books and quoting, and that's fine. But like Damien said, you got to quote it in context as well. I mean, so I'm talking about in this type of context. I'm not talking about like reading the book. I'm talking about context as in like how me and you just did Dr. King before listening to that. When you was like, oh, he was 19, he was in college at this age. That's context. You see what I'm saying? So, and I don't think that he probably had this. Not that he don't know the book and his quote. I don't think he probably have had this argument outside of just reading the book. You see what I'm saying? And then now for Damien to come and get some context to it, because this is an argument that Damien and them have all the time with, as you know, James White and other people. So they used to it. That's why Damien told him before he even read the book, before he even gave the quote, Damien like, I already know where you're going. You see what I'm saying? So you see what I'm saying? So it wasn't nothing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't like that this particular argument with regards to Dr. King, just because you know, I'm already aware of what the indications and what the accusations are towards him as it relates to white evangelicals and what I call sellout black evangelicals, basically trying to delegitimize him on all levels based on something that he wrote when he was in college. And so I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's helpful
at all
for Shakka or any other black man to bring it up in a way that's out of context. You walking with me?
Yeah. No, I agree with you totally, man. Especially everything that he did for us, just as a black man. You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff that he did. And I'm not saying don't bring up nobody's faults, because I honestly don't mind that. I know other people do, but don't judge a person out of character and out of context. Yeah, you can tell my past, but then let it be known too that I was right here at this point. You know what I'm saying? Or I was right here at that point. And when it comes to Dr. King, for y'all to take something that he said or did at 19 and younger, and then to totally overlook the stuff that he did in the realm way after that would probably bump heads with how he felt back then. You can't just throw that out the window like that.
It's like taking me at 21, 22 years old and saying that I believe it's fine for a man to have a wife or a girlfriend and keep her over here safe and sound up on a pedestal, but then have 5 or 6 chicks on the side that you pretty much can run through and do whatever you want to with. Because I believed that at 21. My father taught me that. I believed it. I thought it was okay. Long as I'm doing what I'm supposed to do at home, it's fine. It ain't gonna be nothing wrong with it. And of course, that wasn't the way to be if I wanted to maintain a trusting, functional relationship with my wife. Now, you know, of course, if that's the kind of agreement we had going into it, that's a whole different topic.
What it is. Yeah.
But the fact that I took vows to be with her and only her, and she ain't trying to share me with nobody, then that wasn't the way to be. And that's like taking that, my belief back then, and applying it to me now, and saying, okay,
we don't judge him off this.
Yeah, this is how he was. No, it don't work like that. So,
and vice versa with me. Take me back in my rap lifestyle, how I was back then compared to now. Yeah, you totally couldn't do that. I was a totally different person. So yeah, I feel you.